Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Rother District Council Planning Committee. This is the first meeting since the recent elections, and so we welcome a number of new members who are especially welcome, and of course the old faces too. We have with us this morning a number of officers who are assisting us. If we could start from the left with Julie.
My name is Julie Hollins. I'm the Democratic Services Officer and I'm servicing the meeting for you this morning.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ben Hook. I'm the Director of Place and Climate Change. I'm not a regular at the Planning Committee meetings, but I'm here to support your first one, and I'll be here for any major issues that you need help with. So, but otherwise, I'll pass you over to Kemi.
Good morning, members. My name is Kemi Orifefieme. I'm the new Development Manager, and you will be seeing a lot of me in committees. Thank you.
Morning, councillors. My name's Matthew Worsley. I'm the Major Applications Team Leader in Development Management.
Good morning, I'm Kirsty Cameron. I'm the Principal Solicitor.
Good morning, I'm Asma Chowdhury and I am Senior Planning Officer.
Thank you all. So the first item on the agenda are the minutes. There are two meetings, and the first meeting was the earlier one in April, which I have now lost my place, 13th of April 2023. Would those who were present at that meeting indicate if you agree the minutes, please? Agreed, and I shall therefore sign. And we then have the meeting of the 24th of May, which was the formal one after the full council meeting, and we can all vote on that. Those in favour? Yes, carried. Thank you. Julie. Thank you. Item number 2, apologies for absence and substitutes. Over to you, Julie.
So we have apologies from Councillors Bayliss, Byrne, Drayson, Gordon, Groner, Cook and Stanger. Councillor John Barnes is standing in today as substitute for Councillor Gordon. Councillor Coleman is standing in for substitute for Councillor Bayliss. And Councillor Tempe is standing in as substitute for Councillor Stanger.
Thank you. And are there any additional agenda items?
No, there's none.
Are there any withdrawn applications?
No, there's none.
Item number 5, disclosures of interest, and this is to receive any disclosure by members of personal and disclosable pecuniary interests in matters on the agenda, the nature of any interest and whether the member regards the personal interest as prejudicial under the terms of the Code of Conduct. Members are reminded of the need to repeat their declaration immediately prior to the commencement of the item in question. So, are there any disclosures of interest, please? None? There is none. We then have the planning applications index, which I'm sure we approve. And we move to the first application, which is RR 2023 430p 55 Southcliffe Bexhill. And this, the case officer, Asma is here, Asma Chowdhury is here to present the facts to us. Thank you.
Right. This is a Section 73 application, which is an application to vary details of a previously approved application. So the approved application, which was approved in 2021, was for the replacement of the existing dwelling with a 3-storey dwelling, with one of the stories being a basement level. This application for variation seeks to remove the basement level, including the swimming pool contained within it, resulting in a 2-storey contemporary dwelling. Other changes include variations to the detailed design, that is, alterations to the style of windows, removal of a few windows, changes to the materials, a brise soleil panelling on the east side of the terrace, this is at the rear of the property, and internal alterations. No changes are proposed to the scale and height of the proposed dwelling. Its dimensions and position within the plot would remain the same. The only other thing that isn't on the committee report is that there were no conditions on the original permission for a schedule of materials. As the proposal includes changes to the appearance of the dwelling, it is considered appropriate to include an additional condition for a material schedule prior to any above-ground construction. Otherwise, in this case, the proposal is considered to constitute insignificant variations of details that would not be materially different to the permitted scheme, and the recommendation is therefore approval. Thank you.
Yes. Are there any elevations showing the differences?
Yes, they're up on the screen. So you've got the block plan there that you're looking at now. So, sorry, I'm not seeing that very well. I think that's approved on the left-hand side. Oh, no, sorry. It's proposed on the left-hand side and approved on the right-hand side. And you can see that the position within the plot is exactly the same, and the footprint is also exactly the same.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. We have some elevations there as well. Thank you.
Right, the elevations, you will see that the width of the dwelling is the same, remains the same, but you will also see that the style of windows, so you've got the proposed plans on the left-hand side and the approved plans on the right-hand side. The style of windows have changed, but their general shape are the same. And the material finish is also slightly different. They haven't detailed what the material changes are, but you can see that there's a banding across the midsection of the dwelling and a deeper banding across the top section of the dwelling. And they've altered the brickwork above the forward projection on the front elevation. And there are changes to the design of the porch as well.
Thank you. Does any councillor have any questions for Asma Chowdhury, for the officer? Councillor John Barnes.
Can Asma just remind us, I remember when we visited this site, we were very concerned that the cliff face remained not sort of sanitised. It is part of the conservation area. That condition still stands, does it?
That condition was discharged, I can't remember if it was earlier on in the year or later last year, but engineers' reports was submitted and that condition was discharged.
That wasn't my question. I know the engineer's report was submitted. We had a condition covering the use of planting on the cliff face. Is that still extant? Because it seems very important to me, as that's part of the conservation area.
Yes, I think the Councillor Barnes' question relates to the vegetation on the cliff face. I mean, all the conditions, all the original conditions remain in place, do they not? I think that's right. All
the other conditions, there was a landscaping condition. sorry, my apologies, I'm thinking from memory now, but there was some discussion about the landscaping involved last year, and there was a lot of landscaping, and the applicants were asked to remove a lot of the re-landscaping and leave the elevations, the topography of the rear garden, the beach-facing garden, as is, just to maintain the vegetation and the special characteristics, particularly when viewed from the beach side.
Thank you very much. Does that answer your question? It does. Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think we've ever had anything that contains a brise soleil before. Would somebody kind of tell us what it will do and how it will impact?
I will let Asma Chowdhury answer that one, although I looked it up myself.
A brise soleil, fancy term. It's basically either vertical or horizontal, generally timber slatting on a wall, sometimes on a roof. It provides screening, shade, obscurity, privacy. It's basically a slatted panel that can be controlled so that it can open up or completely close. So you can have full privacy, or you can open it up slightly to allow a little bit of light through. It's a version of an outdoor blind, if you like.
Thank you. You have another question?
I have another question, yes, please. In 7.5, it says, in respect of the proposed alteration to the internal layout and the external appearance of the dwelling, regard to the design policies and considering their purposes, having regard to the character of the area. If we're only actually looking at internal work, why are we having to worry about the character of the area?
There are some changes proposed to the external appearance.
Chairman, can I just say that we're looking at something which has hardly changed externally? Is that right? Are those external changes of any great importance?
Well, I think my understanding is that the patio area is slightly extended. It's within the same footprint, I think, but it carries on flat rather than dropping down a level. The brise soleil is an external feature on each side of the patio, and I think some rainwater drain pipes have appeared somewhere along the way, and you saw some slight changes to the fenestration to the windows. So would that...
The brise soleil is on one side, so it's on the west side of the terrace.
We will have an opportunity for a broader discussion later, but unless there are any further questions, we'll move on to the speakers, I think. Is Mr. Moray here? Please come forward. And you've been here before, Mr. Moray, so you know the rules, that you have to press the button so the red light comes on. And you have 5 minutes and no more than 5 minutes to speak.
Fine. Well, I'd like to start by clarifying points from the officer's report. The permission for 57 was not granted very recently. It was in 2016, has now lapsed, and the owner has no plans to renew it. And the applicants at 59 have sold their bungalow and it remains undeveloped. So the proposal at 55 stands alone as a new development. Appraisal points 7.8 and 7.9 are incorrect, and 7.12 does not address the key issue of accuracy of the plans with relation to existing buildings. And the key variations are not insignificant. The drawings for this application now show this brise soleil 4 metres high over the terrace running down the rear of the garden for at least 4 metres from the rear of the proposed building, which itself is 2 metres beyond the established building line. This is essentially a high wall built in complete lack of consideration for its neighbours. It will totally dominate what is now an open boundary, steal more evening light, and completely reinforce the impression that this new building is turning its back on its neighbour with no respect for existing harmonious aspect. Further than this, like you, I've read and considered Rother's probity and planning document, and noted in the section regarding officers' reports to committee, it states that the courts and ombudsman advice have been determined officer reports on planning applications must have regard to the following points, one of which is relevant information should include a clear exposition of the development plan, site or related history, and any other material considerations. How can it then be that the report presented for this application has not made it clear that the application it seeks to vary is under enforcement investigation? This enforcement action is in place because the plans that were shown at committee twice and were supplied for site visits were inaccurate. The key front of elevation inaccurately showed our property being considerably further away than a laser survey has proved is the reality. Therefore, the gap between the buildings will be substantially less than the committee was led to believe, and this has a huge impact on our amenity and safety. We have been at Southcliffe for 60 years and know that funneling of the wind through the reduced gap will regularly make our side access inaccessible, and fear that the vortices of wind that this box design will cause damage to our property. We pointed this out at the start, just as we did the issue of transmission of vibration through the local strata. Had we been listened to on that issue, then we wouldn't now be looking at tens of thousands of pounds worth of damage caused by works at 55 that quite literally shook our house apart. The applicant has had months to respond to our concerns over wind and light and to proactively commission appropriate studies. Yet I put it to you that there has been no qualified and appropriate evaluation of the risks and extent of amenity loss. How can there have been when the plans misrepresent key dimensions? There is a further serious issue concealed within this application. The drawings have been altered in an attempt to subvert the proper process. In the revised elevation PL 350 Rev A, all reference to the proximity of neighbouring properties has mysteriously disappeared. The undeclared consequence of this is that if these plans are approved here today, the applicant will be able to build against plans that are not those on which the Planning Committee based their consideration, judgment and subsequent approval. There will therefore have been no accurate assessment of the impact of the development on Rother core strategies in OSS4 in respect of 1, the amenities of neighbouring properties need to be protected in terms of loss of light and privacy, avoiding overbearing presence, and 2, respecting and not detracting from the character and appearance of the area. One must conclude that this is an attempt to remove this critical issue of safety and amenity without addressing it, and I'm frankly astonished that it's been brought to this room. The enforcement investigation was confirmed in mid-February, together with the statement. Please be advised that the planning enforcement plan requires decisions to be made within 3 months of the start of the enforcement investigation. As we are now in June, this decision must have been made, so why do we not have it here now? There is High Court precedent that means that the investigating officer would be wise to conclude that accurate drawings must be resubmitted for approval. So what's going on here? In conclusion, this is an application that proposes huge changes to the building in terms of internal volume and design and additional features that are unreasonable and unneighbourly. It contains a concealed strategy to undermine national and local planning strategies and requirements, as well as avoiding proper scrutiny in respect to an investigation with precedent in the High Court. On these grounds, I would ask you to refuse. But I should add that neighbours
10 seconds.
And local residents are only looking for plans for a development based on accurate and properly considered plans against which the prescribed checks and balances can be applied to minimise negative impact on the continued enjoyment of their homes and character of the neighbourhood.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think, first of all, I have been advised, and I'm sure I will be advised again, that we can't revisit the original decision. But a number of matters you've raised there, I think that the officers will need to answer. For example, about enforcement action.
An enforcement case was raised based on the accuracy of the plans that relates to the parent application, the original application, which this application is seeking variation from. In terms of the accuracy of the plans, having done the measurements, they are accurate, but where construction begins, if the development has been constructed or is being constructed not in accordance with the plans, for example, they've made the footprint wider, they've made the height of the dwelling taller, then there would be a breach of condition and enforcement action can be taken. But in terms of accuracy of the plans, before anything can be constructed, or as far as I'm aware, works haven't begun. I know they've put up hoarding, maybe they have started to begin works now. But at the time of the initial complaint, there was no construction. So we're talking about whether plans were accurate before construction had begun to see whether the construction was in breach of the approved plans. In terms of whether the plans are accurate and whether the applicant would build out not in accordance with the plans, the expectation is that they do. And if they don't, then we have an enforcement procedure to get involved. If you look at the block plans, Matt, if you could put up the block plan, please. You would see the position of the dwelling within the plot and its distance from the boundaries and away from the dwellings either side. So the dwelling would be expected to be constructed within the plot as shown on the block plan.
Just to be clear again, we cannot today revisit the original grant of planning permission which we gave before.
No.
And it's not expired. It wasn't 2016 to my memory.
It's 2021.
Thank you. Now, do councillors have any questions for Mr. Moray, please? Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Moray, for coming to speak to us today. My question is, you mentioned the wind tunnel issues in terms of damaging your property. To what extent or in what particular matters does the change of application from the approved plans to this one worsen or change or affect that?
In the approved plan, our building was shown next door to the elevations in which it's not shown here. And the distance between the buildings was 5.4 metres. Our building was shown further away than it actually is. So in reality, if it were built according to the plan, that distance would now be 3.5 metres, which is substantially different. And you're talking about a pitch roof house, which used to be next door to a pitch roof house where the distance was probably 13 metres, something like that. And now you have a square two-storey building as high as this, projecting beyond the eaves of our house on either side. So it's as high as this room, right to the corner of the plot. So we feel the wind will come, the prevailing wind generally will come up and may eddy round the corners of the building and take tiles off our roof. But we already know that during not even particularly stormy weather, but strong winds, even with the gas as it is.
Mr. Moray, I think I have to stop you there. We cannot revisit the original grant of planning permission which has been given. Do these proposed amendments make any difference at all to the way the wind will blow around the building?
Yes, because it'll be funneled through over 30% narrower gap than it would be according to this. And also, on the other point, at present I don't believe that the applicants can build because they can't comply with condition 2, which is that the building has to be built according to the submitted plans, which include our building incorrectly placed. Now they have removed any reference.
As I say, we can't revisit what's already been granted, and the space is what the space is. When and if this is built, it will have to be in accordance with the submitted plans, and the plans relate to the red line. I think the red line around the plan. Well, the officer is nodding. So I don't think we can go down that route unless the Brise Soleil or something of that sort actually causes you some new difficulty which wasn't there before. I don't think we can discuss this.
Well, the Brise Soleil is a loss of light, isn't it? But if they're to build their building now, then they have to build it with a gap of 5 metres between ours and theirs, because that's what's on their plans. So in these plans, they're seeking to get around that by removing any reference to our building, so they can build according to where it is on there. But that doesn't take any account away from it. It will be narrower than what committee went to look at, and
as I've said, the plans relate to the spacings within that red line and not in relation to your own dwelling. But Councillor Timpey has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Murray, for giving us your side of the situation. You mentioned that there had been damage to your home, but there's been no construction, so how can that have happened?
There has been demolition of the existing building, and during that, the vibration from the way that they were doing it has caused all sorts of cracking. We think one bay may have fallen away. And I have asked for a method statement and a copy of the risk assessment from the demolition, because we have video of how it was done, and neither have been forthcoming. So we're having to take further action on that through our insurers.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? If not, I will say thank you very much, Mr. Moray. And we then have the applicant, please, and if you'd introduce yourself. And again, you will need to press the button to make the red light come on, and you will have 5 minutes exactly. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Tina Sutherland Bailey, and I'm married to Keir, and we would like to build a house in Bexhill. Just as you heard, unfortunately, one of our neighbours refused to accept the planning committee approval in 2021, and has been campaigning against us to make sure that we actually can't build the way that we were approved to do. Our architects, there are a few people who kind of looked at what we're doing, and we've had some kind of further neighbours who's asked them to come and do their buildings. So, for example, number 69, because they actually do really like the way that we've done it. I would also like to say that, the basis for all of this is really the fact that we chose to go in and put in an amendment to the application and to remove the basement, because we actually listened to our neighbours and we tried to make it slightly smaller. So I think it's super unfortunate that we're sitting here and listening to it like this today. We used local architects. We're trying to use local sources everywhere we go when it comes to this house. And the reason for us also sitting here today is that our architects called Miles Joyce to see if we should actually even put in a change of application. And she recommended that we should do it for everyone's sake. So in some way, it's really unfortunate that we actually have to sit here and have this discussion today. I would also like to say that positioning of the house, there is no change to where the old house was. It's actually positioned on exactly the same, like sidelines as it is to the old buildings. There is not going to be any closer. It hasn't got to do with the plans today or the ones that we actually submitted in 2021, because we are building within the lines of where the old house was towards our neighbours. And we've done that exactly because we don't want to intrude onto them. So there is some smaller changes to the outside, which is literally just that we've tried to make some, because we took away the basement, we had to do some changes to slightly rearrange the rooms inside of the house, which has led to some smaller changes when it comes to the front door and a couple of windows, which are actually smaller than they were before. The basis for how the house is going to be positioned is based on something that's called the Land Registry OS plans, and it's standard practice. They are not correct, totally correct, and we've spoken to Joyce about this, and she's still so we've used what's normally used for this. And I would say that both the original planning officer and the committee were comfortable when they approved of this, when we had the original approving in 2021. So, as I say, we are not changing the positioning on the sides, towards the other, to our neighbours' buildings. We have had party wall surveyors onto both of the properties on the side to make sure that if there is any kind of damage that's going to be done to the neighbouring buildings, we will make sure that that is, of course, sorted and made, and taken care of. Number 57 has shown a couple of things. We've already kind of, had our builder to come and fix it. They were so pleased that they're actually using the builder, that we're having like the smaller builder for some other projects. And when it comes to the ground, we've done some new structural engineering, checks, and we have decided to go for another type of piling for the base, since we're not having the basement anymore, to make sure that it's as little damage as possible to the grounds. And, you should have the details of how we're going to do that. So in summary, really, I just want to say that there is no change to the upper 2 floors. What we have done is that we have omitted the basement. We have tried to listen to our neighbours. We have come with our structural surveyors. And all we want to do is really to get a house down here and kind of like stay where Keir's granddad used to be. And that's it. I'm open for questions.
Well, thank you very much indeed. In fact, you're 30 seconds within the 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, councillors, are there any questions? Councillor John Barnes.
Yes, through you, Chairman. Could you just explain the changes to the terrace and exactly where the Brise Soleil is?
It's actually in exactly the same place as it was before. So it's when you come out from the kitchen, we have it. So it's kind of one of those things that it gives you partly shadow and partly sun coming through where we will sit on the outside terrace. So that's exactly. So if you look at the kind of 2 houses, like, I don't know, it's one house, obviously. It's like in the right-hand corner if you look at the picture. So where we come out of the kitchen, where we're going to have, if we have some dining space and barbecue area, that's where we would like to have it if it's too hot, which I wish it will be sometimes.
Thank you. And,
any more questions?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming today. I just want to say how pleased I am that you've decided against the basement and the swimming pool. That was always a big worry, particularly in that position with the cliff. So thank you for making that decision.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Are there any more questions? No? No? Well, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And we have Councillor Oliver, the ward councillor. I believe you wish to speak.
Former chair of the planning committee, and I was then copied into correspondence. I then asked Miles Joyce as to how one can deal with this, and he suggested call it into committee so that it could be looked at with the concerns that were raised by the residents of this property, adjacent neighbours of this property.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Well, we then throw this open to discussion. Does any councillor wish to speak? Does anyone wish to make any proposition? Councillor Ganley.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, having carefully studied the report and listened to both speakers, I I consider that there is that the proposal would constitute insignificant variations of details that would not be materially different to the permitted scheme, and move approval, including the conditions thus proposed.
Thank you. So we have approval moved. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Or, well, well, we would need a seconder if we were to proceed on that basis. Is there a seconder for approval? Councillor Coleman. And does anyone wish to speak? No? Councillor John Barnes.
Yes, I think we are in a slightly unfortunate situation. The law is the law. The allegation appears to be, and it is an allegation, I see no proof, that we were misled on the original committee as to the distance between the houses. And we might have actually taken a different decision about the build form of the property. However, as I understand the law, those are things we can't change now. And that leaves us, I think, looking at the changes here, which are acceptable. In fact, I think the removal of the basement is actually welcome, because a number of us were very worried about the stability of the cliff if there was substantial intrusion into it. So to that extent, I think this is actually a better proposition. Nor is the design in itself unacceptable. I'm not an engineer, I can't speak for wind conditions, but the bulk of this design is exactly that which we actually approved in 2021, and we can't change that. So I think, frankly, there is nothing we can do. There are procedures open to objectors outside the planning procedures, which they will have to consider if they think that we were substantially misled. But I'm afraid that, with a degree of reluctance, because I hate it when there is that kind of doubt about the original application, I think I have to go along with Councillor Ganley.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Timpey.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was on the original committee as well, so I remember this well. I'm just really quite concerned about this fact that the drawings, and the applicant mentioned that what the land registry has isn't accurate. So how have we made it accurate? What have we done to make them accurate?
It's not for us as a local authority to make plans accurate. The onus lies with the applicant and their agents to ensure that the plans that they submit are accurate. Ordnance survey plans are as accurate as you can get them. So there are always going to be variations from the pure accuracy, if you like. And OS make no bones about that. They don't hide that. Boundaries change and they can't always reflect what's on the ground, but it's near enough. So any red line should be accurately represented in terms of ownership on the site. It shouldn't be assumed that the OS lines forms the boundary, but it's near enough and it's a good base to work from.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I tend to agree with my colleagues that this really should be approved.
Well, thank you. And does any other councillor wish to speak? No? In which case we should move to a vote, I think, Julie. So all those in favour, and in favour means to approve, all those in favour, please raise your hands, and Julie will count. That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. So that application is granted. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Which brings us on to the next item, which is item number 8, RR 2023 430p. Sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. RR 2022 2839p. That's Bigwood, land at London Road, Battle. And I ask Matthew Worsley to introduce the application.
Thank you, Chair. Right, thank you. Yes, the Bigwood site is located to the east side of London Road in Battle, roughly halfway between the developed part of Battle, so Virgin's Lane, and Canadia Road to the north. It's located within the countryside and the High Weald area of outstanding natural beauty. The site has historically been occupied by an agricultural storage barn served by a narrow, unmade access. On the screen here, you can see a Google Street View image from 2016. In 2020, works commenced without planning permission to widen the access and surface the track. Storage containers were also brought onto the land, and a mixed use of agriculture and storage of building materials and machinery commenced. The unauthorised development was subject to an enforcement notice, which was upheld at appeal in June 2022. This current application before you was submitted to us in December 2022 for a replacement agricultural building and retention of the track and hard standing. Difference being from the enforcement case that the application is purely for an agricultural use. The proposed building would be in the location of the existing, which you can see on this image. Which is also shown in the site or block plan, showing that the proposed new building would be on top of the existing dilapidated building. The new building would be 30 metres in length, 15 metres in width, and 5.5 metres at ridge height. And the materials would consist of green-coloured metal sheeting. It would be used solely for the storage of hay, machinery, and rare breed cattle. In October 2022, a Rother officer visited the site and observed cattle on the land and within the existing building. Hay and agricultural machinery were also observed to be being stored within the existing building. The agricultural business consists of a herd of 16 rare breed cattle, which will be sold at market. The proposed building replaces an existing dilapidated building, which is not suitable for modern agricultural practices. The building is of a similar scale and typical design for this countryside and AONB location. There is a justified agricultural need for the building, and the improved surfaced access means vehicles can access the site all year round. The image you saw from 2016 showed a muddy track, and from previous observations from officers on site, this was badly churned up when the weather's wet. So this surface track allows access all year round without making a mess of the site. You will also have noted the increase in width to the access from London Road. Those who know London Road, it is a very straight, vehicles travel very quickly. Visibility from the old access would have been extremely poor and dangerous. Widening the access has allowed improved visibility and thus improves highway safety for users of the site and also other road users. In conclusion, there is a clear agricultural justification for the development. The site has been used for agricultural purposes historically, and it's officers' opinion that there's no reason to withhold permission to allow improved facilities at the site. It is recommended that the application is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any questions for Mr. Worsley? Councillor Mary Barnes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like really a bit of a definition about what is an agricultural holding as opposed to a farm. So are we clear that the total extent of the acreage to this farm is 9 acres?
That is what we've been advised, yes, and that's what the site plan shows.
Okay, but on 722 it says the herd now consists of 16 animals as well as an increase to the holding of 9 acres. What does that mean?
I think in total it means it's 9 acres.
Right, okay. And there are going to be 16 cattle there.
There are.
Yeah, okay. So each animal requires an acre of land. I've had this from a farming neighbour. So for every cow, you need an acre. Are we absolutely confident, and unless you can tell me about how the farming of these animals is going to take place, is there going to be a rapid turnover, since I see it's also for breeding cattle? Are we sure that there is sufficient land to justify a building which is 30 metres long and 15 metres wide on an acreage of 9 acres, when clearly they have more than a farmer who is a dairy farmer, for example, would consider adequate for the needs of those cattle?
I think if you look at what's there already, it is a large building. What they're proposing is similar in size. The information you've gathered from a neighbour, I can't comment on.
Yes, I mean, sometimes we have, there's the agricultural surveyor sometimes gives an opinion on the viability of agricultural enterprises. That's not been necessary in this case.
The Rural Estate Surveyor hasn't been consulted on this case, no.
Kemi would like to say something.
Sorry, can I just add that this application is actually for the replacement of the building, not the use. So in terms of the comment on the agricultural use, this is not being proposed at this stage, and it's already in place. So we shouldn't be considering the use. We've only made reference to the use because it was part of an appeal decision where the inspector concluded that there wasn't concluded that the track or the unlawful containers being stored within the land was not constituted a mixed use on the site. So in terms of storage and agricultural use. And for that reason, that sort of sealed the fact that this land has always been used for agricultural holding. And so for that reason, we're only considering, or members should only be considering the replacement building. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you. And just for clarity, of course, the containers have been removed and are not coming back as part of this application.
As far as officers are aware, the containers have been taken off. We're not aware that they're still there. And the reason for this application is just to replace the building and also retain the work that they've carried out to the tracks, which the inspector also commented on in his appeal decision.
Councillor John Barnes.
Can we go back to the photograph of the existing building?
Both images showed the existing building.
One taken from the road will be adequate, I think. It shows the track.
Yeah, I've lost the cursor.
So we've just got a bit of a
technical issue.
Technical issue here.
That's it.
Can we go back? Go back? Oh no,
no,
that's forward.
There we go. There we are. Found it. Right, previous.
That's the one.
This one.
Can you tell us what materials that building is?
From it looks like metal sheeting to me to the roof. The elevations I can't make out.
Okay. If you can't.
While we're on that picture, I see that it's been suggested that some landscaping could be conditioned. We could require as a condition that some landscaping to soften the appearance of that could be imposed by this committee. Perhaps, just thinking out loud, some planting of a hedge behind the wooden fence between the road and the gate might soften the appearance quite considerably. Councillors might wish to think about that in discussions. Kemi would like to speak.
This is something that the applicants are, open to, if it would help members, and it's also just for members to bear in mind the enforcement appeal that was dismissed. The inspector did make comment in terms of that widening of the access and the sort of harshness of that when viewed from the street scene. So they are open if members are considering approval to provide additional landscaping to help screen that and make it, improve it to a certain degree. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm going to go to Councillor Creaser and then Councillor Ganley.
In terms of the original building, it probably is wooden cladding with a tin roof. And where you're looking at that sort of thing, obviously, we're not going to, physically, we're going to have like for like, but you're not going to have the same materials because we've moved on in our ability to build buildings that will stay there. Just aside, although it isn't a consideration today, the modern farming techniques, particularly with rare breeds, doesn't necessarily mean they have to have the same amount of acreage per creature. And a lot of it can be done within the building. And obviously, they're not asking for any bigger. So I'm not sure about the landscaping because it's the countryside. It should be natural, in my humble opinion. Not that humble. So I would say this is fine. I haven't got a problem with this at all. And having lived right out in the countryside for a number of years, I think it's right. I think it should go. Thank you.
Councillor Ganley, and then I had forgotten, I'm very sorry, Councillor Field, the ward member, but I'll go to Councillor Ganley first. Very courteous. Yes, Councillor Field.
Thank you very much. Yes, my colleague, or our colleague, Councillor Cook, called this in some time ago. It is in the AONB. Although Battle Town Council was fairly unconcerned, I do have some concerns about this application. And although we are talking about a replacement barn on the site of an existing barn, I think the usage of the land is relevant because it's the usage which justifies the building being there at all. If there was no usage, there would be no building. Now, I'm not at all anti-farming, and I would usually support farming enterprises in the countryside, but we're not talking here about a long-standing local family. We're talking about an applicant who lives, well, his postcode is in Romford, and we're talking about animals on the site. Now, animals, you can't just leave it. They have to be tended and looked after. And I'm very concerned about the environmental impacts of this and all the driving around that's going to be caused if this barn is built and can accommodate these animals. Now, he says in his application they're rare breeds, but a neighbour says they're Herefords. I didn't think Herefords were rare breeds, but they're just ordinary cows. And I guess as far as the acreage is concerned, it depends if you're raising beef or dairy, because their requirements for husbandry are very different. I married into a farming family, and we talk about these things. So yes, I'm concerned it's the AONB. I'm concerned it's incremental development encroaching on the AONB. I am concerned that better access increases the traffic on this very fast piece of road. And I am very concerned that we are not helping local families, and there will be an environmental impact, huge, all the travelling to and from that site, particularly if the travelling is starting in Romford. Thank you.
I don't know whether we can have any advice from officers or legal on that as to how many of those matters raised we can legitimately consider today. There's the environment, which I would very much hope that we can.
In terms of the applicant, the fact that they live in Romford is irrelevant. You're not looking at the background of the applicant. You're looking at the application in front of you, which is for the building itself and not the use. Obviously, Kemi has already advised that we're not looking at the use. You're looking at the application in front of you. So you're essentially just looking at the replacement of the building and the retention of the track.
Can I take Ben Hook first? Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. It's just to help sort of clean up some of the other points that Councillor Field raised, which are perfectly legitimate in regards to animal welfare and whether the treatment and husbandry of the animals on the site is appropriate. I think that's one thing that in terms of a planning issue, it's not necessarily a planning issue, very much is an environmental health issue. And therefore, should there be any suspicion that the animals on that site are not being treated in accordance with appropriate practices, then that would be picked up by environmental health post the development of this. And I would hope that would be picked up now if the animals on site weren't being treated in accordance with the proper practices.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Yes, thank you. I did realise that most of what I said wasn't, strictly speaking, a planning matter, but I do think it justifies the need for replacing that barn or not. What worries me enormously about what I have just heard is that the implication appeared to be that if you read what's in the papers, the staff have done their work properly, they're the experts, there is never ever going to be any ground for arguing against an officer recommendation. I find that very difficult.
Yes, Councillor John Barnes. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Well. I do apologise. Yes, Councillor Ganley.
Well, I agree with Councillor Creasy. There's no need for any landscaping. If the applicant wishes to do so, that's up to him or her, or it, whatever the case may be. But my question actually relates to paragraph 7.2.2. And in the middle of that paragraph, there is a sentence which reads, "The herd now consists of 16 animals, as well as an increase to the holding of 9 acres." Oh, you did? Yeah, I didn't follow what was the answer. Could you repeat the answer, please? Well, I don't know who gave the answer. Oh, Matthew.
I mean, the wording says increase to 9 acres, is that correct?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I can't explain the wording of that, I'm afraid. I mean, if it would help, I can bring back show the site plan. It was there. No, there isn't a plan. Report pack. That's got a site plan, hasn't it? Yeah, the start of the report, that shows the site and land holding, I believe.
I think perhaps we need to bring this back on track. We are talking about the use isn't relevant, but it is an existing use. It is an existing building. We're building more or less on the same footprint. And it is a partly retrospective application for the track, but there's always been a track there.
May I continue, Chairman?
Councillor Barnes.
Chairman, may I continue? May I continue with my thinking?
I'm sorry, I thought you'd finished.
No, I don't think it's particularly important, that particular sentence. I've studied the report and listened to comments. And in my view, the barn and track have an agricultural, what it says, as the report says, they both have an agricultural justification and would not cause harm to the character of the locality or that of the High Weald A and B. It would not detract from the road character and appearance of the locality, would not adversely impact on any nearby residential properties, and there are no highway safety concerns. I move approval along with the conditions proposed, and I would say that we have in the past challenged officers' recommendation and indeed gone against officers' recommendation on occasion, unfortunately so. Anyway, my proposal is for approval.
Is there a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Timpey has seconded. John Barnes?
Yes, I think we must be careful not to restrict ourselves too much in what we discuss. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Field. When you look at policy RA3 of the Rother Local Plan, and it's set out in 721, we have in fact to say that these buildings demonstrably need to support farming, woodland and other land-based. They are of appropriate size, siting, design and materials, and directly relate to the enterprise. Frankly, that means we do have to look at a number of considerations. I'm not necessarily going against this one, but it seems to me we can consider whether it's of appropriate size. We are in the AONB, we can consider appropriate materials, and we can actually ask questions about how it relates to the particular enterprise here. This is a replacement for a dilapidated building, and I think I acknowledge there is a need for a barn. I am more concerned in the AONB about appearance than I would be if we weren't in the AONB, because I would have preferred rather more traditional materials rather than what will look a very modern building. And again, the colour should blend into the landscape as far as possible. I also think it is quite appropriate to look at the mouth of the drive and consider whether hedging would not fit in better with the AONB than a post and railing fence. If you look across the AONB, you get relatively small fields always hedged with occasional shores. So a hedge here would be quite appropriate, it seems to me. At where the drive actually hits the road, that seems to be. I'm not in favour of landscaping that is artificial, but to actually put in hedging alongside the fence seems to me a perfectly good way of softening the impact on those who are passing by. I'm inclined to support, but I do think we are being told to ignore considerations which seem to me proper to our consideration in the AMB. And I am very worried, Chairman, that we are getting on relatively small sites now excessively large barns. Often they are relatively close to the parent farm, and yet somehow they need to store machinery on those sites. Pardon my suspicions, but I actually sometimes think that and this is why I think I'm tipping the other way on this one, because this is a replacement barn, I think actually this is more acceptable than were this a de novo proposal.
Now, Councillor, are you proposing an amendment along the lines that there should be some hedge planting with native species, that the exact positioning and species to be agreed with officers?
I'm very happy to leave it to the officers to decide exactly how it's landscaped, and I don't like the term landscape. It implies much more alteration. I'm talking really about appropriate screening at the entrance, and it should take the form of hedging. But beyond that, I'm quite prepared to leave it to the officers to decide what is appropriate.
And do we have a seconder for the amendment?
Yeah, yes, I second the hedgerows.
Thank you.
For biodiversity.
Councillor Ganley. You disagree with the landscaping? Yes. In which case in
which case you have a proposal and a second of the amendment.
I think, we can move away from the word landscaping and probably phrase the condition in sense of additional screening along the access to the site. But the only thing, we did consider this, and we thought
at the access, not along the access.
Yes, I do get that, but again, because they've had to widen the road to provide further visibility onto that sort of busy London road, we have to be careful how that is placed properly without creating another issue in terms of how you access and egress the site onto that busy road. So potentially we could ask the applicant to provide a scheme of screening or of providing some form of screening which consists of edging along that boundary. So we can look into that.
I would make it specifically hedging. Yes. It seems to me that that's the appropriate term rather than landscaping.
I think that would cover screening, sort of, to a certain degree.
I agree, if you don't want a fence.
Not fencing, or sort of soft screening along the boundary.
Yes, we've proposed. We have an amendment proposed and seconded. Now, does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor Coleman.
Chair, it might actually be more of a point of order, but I had considered myself objective in this matter, but actually, as we near a decision, I find myself prejudiced by my views on animals in agriculture, so I might leave the meeting if that's okay, Chair.
I would respect your decision if you wish. Councillor Mary Barnes.
Chairman, since I am against the recommendation, I don't see how I can take part in a vote on the amendment.
Well, it is open to you to abstain. Are there any other speakers on the amendment? And the amendment is to provide some hedging to be agreed with officers as part of the conditions. No more speakers? In which case we shall vote on the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment? And those against the amendment? The amendment is lost. So, now, Councillor Field, do you wish to address us again as ward member? No. Are there any other? One more speaker. Councillor Timpey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I seconded for approval because I'm struggling with why we even have this, because it's just replacing what's already there anyway. So, the fact that someone's called it inappropriate development, it's not development, is it? It's a barn and it's there. That's why I seconded it, because I'm not sure why we're going round and round in circles.
Well, in that case, I think we can move to a vote on the substantive motion. So that those in favour of the application, please show your hands. Those against the application? 3. So the application is granted. Oh, and which brings us on to.
Oh, should we get Coleman?
Oh yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back, Councillor Coleman, and in your absence the application was granted, but without an amendment. Which brings us on to agenda item number 9, RR 2023-638T, which is the King Offa High School site, land adjacent to the kitchen or dining room. It involves works to a tree. And Mr. Worsley.
Thank you, Chair. This is a tree works application relating to an oak tree subject to a tree preservation order on the King Offa High School site in Bexhill. It's brought before you because it's on council property. It's a council application. On the wider site, there is an outstanding outline planning application to build a new leisure centre, 52 dwellings and a car park, which was delegated to approve subject to a legal agreement some time ago, but as it stands, the decision hasn't been issued. As part of that development, the kitchen dining room building would be demolished. This oak tree is right next to it. So on the site plan, if you look in the, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but the far north part of the site, there is a tree, and the kitchen dining room building is in the north part of the site. So that a large tree that you can see in the area of photography is the oak tree. So the canopy overhangs the building quite significantly. The proposed works to the tree would allow the building to be demolished without causing damage to the health and condition of the tree. The works involve raising the crown to 5.5 metres in height, which includes removing one primary branch and multiple secondary branches. Rodder's tree officer has been consulted on the works. He's happy with the proposal and has no objection. In conclusion, the proposed works would preserve the health and condition of the tree and the visual amenities of the locality, and therefore the works are supported by officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. I know there was no site visit, so I thought I would say that I do know this tree very well. It's very close to the area where we've planted King Offa Wood. That's nearly 1,000 new trees that on Saturday mornings we go and care for. It is a magnificent tree. It's about, I would say, about 150 years old. It's been allowed to grow naturally, but I did take a photo because I wasn't sure you were showing photos. This is a photo I took yesterday. You can see that
We're not meant to do that.
But
we'll forgive
I'm
you.
sorry. I thought in the absence of a site visit you might want to see the tree, but I do agree this tree does need the work that you've stated. So yes, I fully support this. We need to look after the tree, but it is in danger of losing branches. So I support the application.
Councillor Timpey.
Sorry, was that a move?
Oh, yes, I can move it.
Because I was going to second it.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? In which case we move straight to a vote. Those in favour of the application. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 10 are the planning statistics for the quarter January to March 2023. That's the fourth quarter, including summary of planning statistics for 2021 to 2023. Who is presenting? And Kemi is to present. I think most councillors have them in front of them in one form or another.
Okay, apologies for this. In terms of what members can see, it's the statistics which we report to the government on a regular basis in terms of the PS1, PS2 returns. And this just takes you through January 2022 to March of this year. So you can see the applications there that we've got. In terms of the applications we're holding currently, you can see how it fluctuates through the year. But looking more closely to the fourth quarter, which is the last one you can see on the slide there, on the graph there, just showing how much applications we're receiving and how, when I looked at that compared to some sort of larger authorities, we're just sort of slightly below in terms of applications received, and that sort of gives you an idea of the amount of work officers have to do and carry out on a regular basis. Moving down to the next one, that just shows also period of the fourth quarter, the number of applications determined, We are doing our best to determine the applications within the set period, which is your 8 weeks application and your 13 weeks, which is for major applications. Officers are doing the best we can to make sure that we're hitting those targets, and we are doing our best to also reduce the reliance on extension of time, which the government are not currently using that against in terms of calculating the statistics, but they do collect it. So they do collect decisions made with extension of site or with extensions to them, and those that are made without extensions to them. But how they use that information at the moment is not to sort of penalize local authorities, but it is something that officers, we are being careful to make sure that we're not relying on it too much. And you can see how the application has changed from the last quarter, which is, which you can see there, of the last financial year to this one here. So applications have gone slightly below, slightly higher, but again, that could be down to the financial, cost of living crisis, and also the issue with being able to access to borrowing, which is quite high at the moment, but we do expect that to go up again now that things are sort of leveling out. And in terms of the percentage of major applications determined, let's just go down one more. We are doing very well in that. We are determining a large percentage of our majors in time. A lot of them do have PPAs with them, so we are working to those contracts and are able to get appropriate extension of time with the developer as relevant. Moving down to the minors, 80% on the minors. We are within the set target that the government sets us, but we could go higher just to ensure that our performance is still quite on top and good. It is slightly dipped from the third quarter, but that is down to the number of applications that can affect and fluctuate the percentages. In terms of the other applications, go down a bit. 85% again. I mean, we are doing well, but we could do better. We are aware of that, and there are factors here that we've built in. So we've got an outdated software which is coming to its end of life soon. So we have to consider as a council how we replace that and move to sort of more automated ways of working. And that would, when we do move to that, you will see the difference in these figures, hopefully. In terms of appeals, we are, I mean, I have to say that we're doing well in terms of our appeals decisions. We do have a lot that is lodged against us, but that just means that we are making the right decisions, because if you look on the next slide, you can see the number of appeals we're winning. The red indicates those that are allowed, and the blue indicates those that are dismissed, which means the council is making good decisions. We are still improving on that, because we do review our appeal decisions and see what we're getting right and what we're getting wrong, and how to improve on those decisions going forward. Just going down to the next one. In terms of enforcement, again, that constantly goes up and down. I do have regular meetings with the enforcement team, and a lot of the figures look really large, but when we go through the complaints coming through, a lot of them are not planning related, so we have to push them to the right department or put no further action on them. If there are, it depends. We would go out, we would investigate any breach. If we believe that the breach is not significant or to warrant expedient action, then we would either put no further action or request the homeowner to put in an application to rectify the breach. There are some that they might be building and it could be permitted development. Again, those are the kind of things we would not carry, we would do as no further action to. And in terms of complaints, in my time here, that will be the fourth quarter, I would say. I would say that we are dealing with complaints well. We have had a couple of JRs against our decisions, and we are sort of still doing well in terms of making the right decisions. A lot of the complaints we get tend to be about how we've made decisions, but we are able to defend them properly. And in terms of active complaints on hand, it says we've got 231, but I'm not quite sure where that is from. But that is probably related to the enforcement that we actually also are investigating. So we class them as complaints because they're coming through the complaints process through the enforcement. But in terms of people actually making formal complaints about the officers or how we've handled an application, those are quite extremely low. And I mean, that is just a snapshot to members. And we also have the list of appeals currently on hand. As you can see through all the lists there, it is quite a lot, and we are getting decisions back. And I think we had a couple yesterday which we actually won. They were both dismissed, which were really good decisions for us. And by the time we report this again, those will come off the list. Inspectors have a huge caseload on their hands at the moment as well. So the ones that we received decisions on yesterday were from, I think, 2021. So you can understand the amount of work they've got on them. So for this current appeal list to go down, we probably will be waiting probably another end of year, towards the end of the year, or maybe early next year for some of them to be decided. But it just goes to show how much work everyone, I mean, a lot of the public services on the resourced and sort of trying to move on to dealing with things as quickly as they can. And just go down. And the last one just gives a list of appeals that have started and those that are, those that we're just waiting for decisions, which are more or less the same thing. So just mindful that members should be mindful of the amount of work in there. And that some of this, if your constituents sort of ask you about it, beware there is no delay, it's not anything delay from us, but from PINS, which is out of our hands. So does any member have a question about the
Ben Hook will want to say something in a moment, but I have a question myself. Okay. On the VAR charts, there's a dotted blue line running more or less horizontally, sloping slightly one way or the other. I don't know what it means.
Well, in terms of which one of them? It just gives you I think it's just to give you an idea in terms of the average of what we should be getting or we should be holding, and we are below in some cases. So we have gone in terms of trajectory, of complaints coming through. We are.
So it's like a moving average.
Linear trend.
Linear trend.
Linear trend.
Yeah.
That's the word I was searching for.
Sorry, trend. Yeah, so going down or going up in some cases. So just to track it.
Okay. Thank you. Ben.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm just conscious, obviously, this is the first committee of a new council. I'm going to avoid saying old faces. I may not follow your lead on that one, Chairman. I might get stung for it. But in terms of just introducing our new members into the role of planning committee in relation to the statistics and how you need to sort of, well, you don't need to, but how it might be worthwhile you considering those statistics. So in terms of sort of performance of the department, I mean, some of these statistics do indicate performance of the department. Performance of the department sits with the relevant portfolio holder in terms of responsibility and is the oversight of overview and scrutiny to hold those portfolio holders to account for any failing performance of a department. So in terms of speed of application process, how many applications on hand, are we serving our customers well? That's sort of much more sits in the realm of overview and scrutiny in terms of their oversight of this. In terms of the planning committee, you really want to be focusing on the quality of decision making, because it's your delegation that you give to officers to fulfil that function on your behalf. So it's very much you delegate the power to officers in order to make those decisions on your behalf that don't need to come to planning committee because they fit within a remit. So what you really want to do is you really want to be focusing any discussions or any consideration, really focusing around that quality of decision making. Are we, are the appeals of an acceptable number? Are we getting, our appeals not going in our favour? Appeals allowed, for example, getting too high? That's the sort of questions. Are we making the right considerations in terms of that planning balance between the needs of business versus the needs of residents versus the needs of the AOMB? So I think it's just sort of making sure that you are content through these quarterly statistics that the planning department are fulfilling the function that you've delegated to them effectively, which is around that quality of decision making rather than necessarily the speed or the performance of the department, which more sits with overview and scrutiny. I know it's not always a straightforward cut and balance, and feel free to discuss whatever you like, really, but I'm sort of just trying to help guide where you might get best value out of any debates or discussions on these matters. Thank you, Chairman. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Councillor Ganley.
Thank you, Chairman. At last night's US Parish meeting, I was asked again, or not again, for the first time by the Parish Council for a reply to a complaint lodged probably about 10 or 12 days ago. And the development concerned was on Junction Road in US Parish on the right-hand side going north. I did get an automated acknowledgement, but the Parish Council would like some indication of what's happening, if anything, or what is planned to happen. Not necessarily what has happened or what has been done, but they would like to know. They don't want to be kept in the dark. I fully understand that. So I'd be very grateful if, Kami, you would be kind enough to jog it along a bit.
Okay, if it's one that we've received through the enforcement form,
yeah,
we will be reviewing those. I have a meeting with the enforcement team later today, and
good,
we'll go through it. But it's not one that's come to my attention.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
Junction Road is not one that's come to my attention. I would remember that. If that's
all right, maybe I'll send you an email then.
Okay. Yes,
okay.
Please.
Thank you.
And Councillor John Barnes.
Page 43, Chairman. I find it difficult to reconcile. We're told of 3 appeals allowed here and 5 in the stats. I presume the 5 is correct. Therefore, what has happened to the other 2? Did they arrive too late to be put on page 43, or what has happened here? It's interesting, and this is not in any way a criticism. I note they're all delegated, the 3 here. I have to say, there is a slight assumption the inspector is always right. Having had a look at the inspectors, there is at least one maverick who tends to reach decisions rather different from those his colleagues reach, putting it quite mildly.
Yes.
As I said when I was going through this, we do review appeal decisions, and we have actually considered one decision where we looked at to see whether or not we could challenge it, but we decided against it because we felt the inspector had taken account of every single issue related to that appeal. I mean, we know that, like any decision, you can't challenge it, but it's a case of, do we feel the inspector has not considered local issues, amenity considerations, and not fully considered our policy in that appeal decision, then we can go, we can challenge how the decision has been made and say maybe and consider whether or not we can win that. But we do review the appeal decisions if we can get it.
I was interested to hear that because I had one in my own ward a while back, which I would have liked to have gone to judicial review, but I was told at the time that it wasn't done, that the council almost certainly never would do such a thing. Has our policy changed slightly?
I think it's always a balanced consideration in terms of the cost of launching a judicial review versus the benefits that might be achieved by by a success at that point. I think that, obviously there are relationship issues. We don't want to be seen as a council who would regularly challenge the decisions of the inspectorate unless it was absolutely necessary. I don't think we would hesitate if we felt we had good standing in terms of the judicial review and that the outcome was necessary. And I think we would definitely challenge those. It's just always that balance about before you launch a legal action, is it appropriate? Do we, what's the benefits to us and what's the likely outcome in that versus sort of, there's always that often, particularly as a political establishment, we're always got that external pressure to be seen to be doing something. And I think sometimes that external pressure to be seen to be doing something can sort of overwhelm the actual likelihood of us winning on any particular legal action. So it has to be a balance between those factors.
I am heartened to hear that we would consider a proper case and if necessary, take it. I find that heartening. Councillor Timper, did you wish to speak now? Councillor Ganley.
Thank you. I'm wondering how many of the appeals that are allowed are delegated and how many are committee decided? Where's that?
It's on page 43, but two of them aren't there, so one can't tell.
We'll find out the answer to that one.
Yeah. Okay, I've got it. Thank you. Apologies.
Councillor Mary Barnes.
Chairman, are we now in general questions, or are we still dealing with?
We're still dealing with the statistics and the appeals report.
I would like to ask a question, but it's not in relation to.
Not in relation to that. Are there any other questions about the statistics or the appeals? Or have we exhausted those topics? Yes. Councillor Mary Barnes, you have something to say.
Thank you. Really, it's one for Kemi. Kemi, at the planning training session, I think right at the very end, possibly when we were all suffering from brain fatigue, you talked about...
Councillor Barnes, yes. If it's a question about training and so on, maybe we should close this public meeting and just have a private discussion. Would that be better? Yes. So in that case, I think apart from the date of the next meeting and the site visits, which are as published, the next site inspections will be on Tuesday, the 20th of June, starting at 9 o'clock from here, from the town hall. And with that, I then formally close the meeting.